King Magnifico was meant to be the triumphant return of the Disney villain, a time-honored tradition spanning generations of Disney storytellers that has led to the creation of classic villains like the Evil Queen, Maleficent, Captain Hook, Ursula, Gaston, Scar, Jafar, and Dr. Facilier. And Magnifico was intended to be the next great addition to this lineup. In the promotional material and in the behind-the-scenes content about Wish, the studio made it clear that this was the return of the classic Disney villain. In bonus features, the creative team talked about how they wanted to create a character that was overtly a villain from the start of the story. They shared how they wanted to see how evil they could make a character again, and how they were committed to making him someone who was completely irredeemable. After examining Magnifico's character for months though, I have come to believe that the creative team was unable to execute on this vision. But for the longest time, I struggled to find the words to describe what I felt went wrong until I turned to the wise words of two of Walt Disney's 9 old men. You see, I literally read the book on Disney's villains, which is fittingly titled The Disney Villain by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. For some context, Frank and Ollie were best friends and master animators who worked directly with Walt Disney. They were animating at Disney from the golden age of animation starting in the 1930s all the way into the 80s. And when it comes to villains, they were quite a powerful duo. When Frank animated Lady Tremaine, Ollie animated the Evil Stepsisters. When Frank did the Queen of Hearts, Ollie did the King of Hearts. And of course, when Frank created Captain Hook, Ollie made Mr. Smee. And after a legendary career, this duo was committed to documenting and sharing all of the knowledge that they had acquired from decades of experiences. And through their philosophy, I want to explain why I believe King Magnifico is an ineffective Disney villain. Using the lessons from Disney themselves, I want to explain why Disney failed to create a new Disney villain. Now, one of the most important takeaways from Frank and Ollie's lessons on Disney villains is that to create a truly compelling villain, there needs to exist an equally compelling victim. They state on the subject of victims, whether this is a single individual or a small band of determined defenders, the audience must be attracted to them, must understand their predicament, identify with their problems, cheer for their efforts, and enjoy their success. If the victim is a sympathetic and appealing character, the audience becomes involved. What this means is that as an audience, we have to have an intimate understanding of who the villain is harming, or else we won't feel invested in what the villain is doing. And I think this is extremely relevant in Wish. Because the truth is that I don't understand why Asha turned against Magnifico at the beginning of the story. I mean, at the start of the film, Asha is literally selling people on Magnifico and why they should stay in Rosas. And she seems to be completely educated on what happens if you give your wish to the king. If you share your wish with Magnifico, you will forget it while he keeps it safe, and once a month during the wish ceremony, there is the potential that you'll have your wish come true. But when Asha finally meets Magnifico, she acts like she has learned some kind of horrible new truth about how Magnifico handles the wishes, even though she really doesn't. Asha may be horrified to find out that her Saba's wish will never be granted, but it seems obvious that every wish won't be granted. If there's ships of people constantly arriving that need to be greeted and Magnifico only grants 1 or 2 wishes a month, then he'll never make every wish come true. In Asha's mind though, she believes that people should be able to pursue their wish if they won't be granted by Magnifico, but that seems to be antithetical to the whole point of coming to Rosas. I mean, Asha's Saba acts so relieved when he inevitably reunites with his wish, since he now has the opportunity to pursue it. But he could have done that before he came to Rosas. He chose to give his wish away, just like everyone else did. I feel like Asha in the film just ignore the fact that King Magnifico never coerces anyone to give their wishes to him. Everyone was informed of the process before they relinquished their greatest desires to Magnifico. They knew that he would have the final say over what wishes would be granted. Now, sure, we were told that one of Asha's friends was supposedly lower energy after he gave up his wish. That could be a consequence that wasn't shared with the people, but most citizens in the kingdom are dancing, singing, and creating art. It's a happy, thriving community and a safe haven where dreams and realities collide. The Kingdom of Rosas seems more like a utopia than a community of subjugated prisoners. Sure, Magnifico would go on to crush wishes and restrain every citizen in his domain, and we'll talk talk about that, but that's not what he was doing when Asha originally turned against him. Prior to Asha meeting Magnifico, he had been keeping the wishes safe for decades. And to me, if everyone understood what would happen when they gave their wish to Magnifico and they were all happy living in the kingdom, then it seems like no one was actually wronged. And what this means is that when Asha wishes on a star, it's unclear what she wants. Julia Michaels and Benjamin Rice, the songwriting team on Wish, stated that they didn't feel like she was the kind of character that would want things for herself after she found out what the king was doing. They believed that Asha would only be concerned about what was best for her community, which led her to make a truly selfless wish. But I don't understand what she wished for. What did she fundamentally want to change? Alison Moore, a writer on Wish, stated that after Asha's first confrontation with Magnifico, she was balancing protecting her friends and being a good family member versus speaking the truth. But what is the truth that she needs to share with everyone? I mean, leading up to Asha's change of heart, across all of the history of Rosas, there's been no indication that King Magnifico is anything but a generous, benevolent, and honorable leader. So why did Asha feel like something was fundamentally wrong with the kingdom because he refused to grant one wish at the request of a teenager? As the events take place, it seems her biggest motivation to have everything in Rosas change is because she believes that it's wrong that her Saba's wish won't be granted. But every other moment seems to try to showcase Asha as a heroic activist fighting against tyranny that seems to not exist to the extent that everyone is describing it to be. The truth is, when Asha turns against Magnifico, there is no clear victim, and this fundamentally weakens Magnifico as a villain. As Frank and Ollie explained, if there is no victim, there is no villainy. And this idea is honestly the reason I wanted to discuss Magnifico's character in more depth. This one line so succinctly articulates why it was so difficult for me to get behind Magnifico as a Disney villain at the start of Wish. I just don't understand what he did wrong, especially after we are told about his past. Magnifico only studied magic, built his kingdom, and protected the wishes of others because his entire family was murdered when he was a child. His whole life and his dreams were destroyed before his eyes, and he swore to do everything in his power to never allow that to happen to anyone else. How can we as an audience not feel empathy for him as he carefully selects who he's willing to empower with his magic? But it's not just that King Magnifico doesn't have any meaningful victims when he's declared to be an antagonist to Asha. He also isn't given any evil plans. You see, Frank and Ollie explained that traditionally, the villain has a plan while the hero and heroine are taken off guard. The villains make up their own rules. They never have to worry about whether they're doing the right or proper thing. They can lie, cheat, kill, and live without guilt or conscience or honor. Most often, they feel completely justified in what they're doing since they consider themselves to be the true victims of an unfair circumstance. But that's not what happens. King Magnifico doesn't have some kind of horrible plot that he's trying to enact. And what this means is that simultaneously, there's little to no stakes surrounding what will happen if Magnifico maintains the status quo in the kingdom, since Rosas has been established to be a wonderful place to live. And we're not shown any indication that Magnifico is planning to make the lives of his citizens worse. Instead, it's Asha who starts plotting against Magnifico. Asha's the one who wishes upon a star. She's the one who acts to steal her Saba's wish. She's the one who plots to free all of the wishes. Magnifico is the one reacting to all of Asha's plans. What this means is that the structure of the story actually puts Magnifico into the role of the victim, which is something that has happened before in Disney's Robin Hood. You see, Frank and Ollie explained that in Robin Hood, the villains were actually the victims, and the supposed victim was a classic hero. With the usual roles reversed, the villains were funny while Robin Hood was the mastermind, the capable instigator. He acted and the villains reacted. They offered the danger of the situations, but the popularity of the legend was all based on making the villains look ridiculous. Try as they could, Robin Hood never seemed to be in any danger. And Asha never seemed to be in much danger either. Mark Kennedy, the head of story on Wish, explained that they really wanted Asha to be the hero, and they wanted her to have to solve all of her problems by herself without too much help from Star. Throughout the production of the film, earlier, more powerful versions of Star were let go, and that meant that Asha was empowered to handle more situations on her own. But the result of this decision is that Asha, a girl with absolutely no magical ability or experience, is able to outsmart, evade, and overpower Magnifico through every step of the journey, which completely undermines Magnifico as a villain. Asha was able to steal Saba's wish, flee from Magnifico, get around Simon, and rescue Star without any serious consequences, meaning that Magnifico, the king and the most powerful sorcerer in the land, is left depicted as being helpless compared to Asha's wits and determination. Sure, Magnifico did crush Asha's mother's wish along with a few others, but nothing serious came about from that. All of the people who had their wishes absorbed by Magnifico didn't have their lives in danger, and we saw that their hearts were still filled with hope, bravery, and magic. And by the end of the story, all of their wishes are able to be returned to them. Magnifico was able to capture Star too, but the ramifications of that for the people of Rosas was left pretty vague. Like, what Magnifico was hoping to do with Star under his control was not explained. And to be honest, what he did was not threatening. Magnifico putting his face everywhere, creating clouds to cover the sky, and unleashing a puff of green smoke when his subjects disobeyed him did not do him any favors in establishing him as a legitimate threat. Sure, he did throw around Asha a little bit too, but the truth is that I never actually believed that anyone's life was in danger, which was a disservice to Asha as a character. As Frank and Ollie explain, a weak villain seldom calls for the creation of a first-class hero. The creative team behind Wish just never allowed Magnifico to cross the line into true villainy. He never poisoned an innocent princess or murdered his brother for the throne or attempted to kill someone so that he could marry their true love. I'm not saying that Magnifico had to threaten someone's life, but it sure seems like that would have been appropriate for his circumstances. Like, Jafar tried to kill Aladdin 3 different times in their movie in the pursuit to becoming the Sultan. But when all of Magnifico's power is being stolen away from him, and he's moments away from being imprisoned for the rest of his life, he doesn't use any of his magic to stop anyone. I mean, at the minimum, he could have restrained everyone's mouths to make them stop singing. But, he also could have ended everyone's lives. I'm pretty sure if someone's completely evil, they shouldn't be above taking the lives of peasants who are about to steal their power and freedom away forever. I mean, come on, in his final moments, he doesn't even try to take revenge on Asha. But the truth is, all of the most evil things that Magnifico does towards the end of the film can't contribute to our understanding of him as a villain, because it's all completely undermined by the fact that he was under a curse. You see, Frank and Ollie explain that mindless villainy coupled with insensitivity can be formidable and often irresistible, but without villainous intent, the perpetrator cannot truly be called a villain. What this means is that to truly be a great Disney villain, a character has to understand the consequences of their actions that they are freely choosing to make. But Magnifico was not in control of himself when he began to truly fight against Asha and her friends. You see, we were told that by embracing forbidden magic just once, Magnifico committed himself to that path for eternity. But by adding this curse, any opportunity that was left to allow Magnifico to evolve into a true Disney villain was stolen away from him, because as soon as he lost all autonomy over his actions, he didn't have a choice but to be evil. Of course, there were moments leading up to the curse where Magnifico was selfish and self-involved. He did have a bit of a temper and a desire to be adored, but having his mind be corrupted forever by dark magic seems like a cruel fate for a ruler who was just hoping to prepare for whatever magic had arrived to his kingdom. He did have his entire family murdered as a child, so he was kind of sensitive to unknown threats. But now, instead of getting the opportunity to see King Magnifico go from a well-intentioned king who inevitably turns against his people to protect his power, the curse further cements him as a tragic figure. Now, Magnifico is just a man who made a mistake in response to the plots that were forming against him, and the consequence was literally losing his soul forever. And all of this just further supports the idea that King Magnifico is the true victim of this story. But you want to know what's crazy too? In The Art of Wish and in deleted scenes, we are told that King Magnifico was meant to be a tyrant who ruled with Queen Amaya as his evil accomplice. Together, they were said to have imprisoned all who opposed them. Magnifico was going to have consumed the wishes of his enemies and subjects to gain their power, and his ultimate goal was to steal a star from the night sky. But according to Alison Moore, the filmmakers felt like it was going to require too much explanation as to why anyone could or would stand up to this version of King Magnifico. And the implication of this statement is that the creative team intentionally weakened Magnifico as a threat so that Asha could independently stand against him. But lowering the stakes doesn't make Asha a more powerful character. Asha overcoming a smaller obstacle actually weakens our belief in her bravery and resilience. It's only through conquering impossible odds that we're able to admire our heroes. Now, of course, the filmmakers at Walt Disney Animation Studios are free to interpret and attempt to reinvent and modernize the Disney villains as much as they like. But personally, when I reflect on the story of Wish and the character of King Magnifico, I think it's insane how many decisions were made that go against the best practices from Disney's own past. How could all of these people who were proclaiming that they were reviving the Disney villain not follow the advice that came from their own studio's discoveries? Walt Disney, the 9 Old Men, and the artists in the Renaissance all contributed to what they learned through all of their successes and failures. This body of knowledge on how to establish a Disney villain has been established, but instead of following these lessons, the information seemed to just be ignored or forgotten by the creators of Wish. Of course, I'd like to make it clear though, that there's not one formula on how to create a timeless story. Walt Disney admitted to this, and I believe that as well. But if you're going to emulate the character archetypes and the story structure from Disney's past, if you're going to put a villain at the center of the story without adopting the best practices to establish that villain as a compelling adversary, you're setting the story up to fail. As Frank and Ollie explained, if the story does not make convincing use of the villains, there is no real menace and there is no heart. If you'd like to see more discussions focused on Disney storytelling, consider subscribing for more. And to keep the conversation going, consider supporting the channel by joining our community over at patreon.com/IsaacCarlson. Over there, you can gain access to our private Discord server where you can chat with me and other Disney fans about everything going on in the wonderful world of Disney. If you're able to support, it truly means the world to me. And finally, I'm Isaac Carlson. Thanks for watching and have a magical day.